have made it to Stu and the Nunn, an online radio show that looks to inform, educate, and hopefully make you laugh. Stu and the Nunn is a show focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on our show chat room, via our Facebook page, and on Twitter. Show possible and allow us to bring it to you. Our show sponsors are Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and BooHammer.com.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. We are running a little late. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Hey, Toby, how you doing there in the Southern Studio, my friend?
What it brought to the table. So it's a good place to be right now, and excited to get this show going. Sorry to everyone that we're late. We had a couple of technical difficulties, mainly with an Uber driver named Christine, apparently. And
thanks for getting me in trouble.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. But glad we got everyone going, and we have a great guest tonight. Since we're running behind, let's just bring him out and let's get this party started.
There we go. All right, we have him on video. Everybody should say, I want to welcome to our great September 24th episode here, last show of September.
And yeah, we got Damani Felder, and our dude. If only he was a little bit bigger.
Yeah, he needs to hit the gym.
He clearly doesn't hit the gym. He clearly doesn't use the proteins or the creatines. He's just a humble, modest little dude.
Tiny. Nickname is Tiny, I think.
Yeah, if only he was bigger. But Damani, welcome to the show, bro. Welcome to Stu and the Nunn. We are excited to have you here, and we got some great things we want to talk about.
Well, thank you all both for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, it's a little late. I know we had some scheduling and technical issues and everything, but great to have you on. I see a couple signs up there behind you. I think you make no between your YouTube channel and videos and obviously your background. There's no mystery about where you stand on some things. Would be safe to say?
Absolutely not. We're at a time now where it is of paramount importance for people to feel emboldened to throw their support behind a candidate in this race right now who has a forward-looking vision for America, who crafts his outreach messages to all Americans, who refuses to pander or cave to the outrage mob, who stands for law and order. So that's someone I'm always proud to throw my voice behind and throw my support behind as well.
So Damani, typically, we have some kind of military connection, veteran connection to the show. And yours is kind of cool. Your family have an entire squad. You're a squad plus deep. But both your parents, so you got what? You got 9 siblings? 8 siblings. You got 8 siblings. But your parents were both Air Force, right?
That's correct. Both my parents are United States Air Force veterans, and then my older brother is an Air Force veteran. His wife is an Air Force veteran. Our grandparents also served in the armed forces, so it's a whole full-blown family affair.
That's what I'm talking about. A lot of people don't appreciate. You hear these terms on the Hallmark Channel and stuff like that. They're like military brat and all that stuff. They don't understand the value. It's a different life. It's a different upbringing. It's a different experience for sure. But man, they don't understand like the value that's spoken into the life of someone that has a parent that serves, let alone two. And to get that double whammy and that appreciation for the country, the appreciation for what you have, the stewardship of what's in the family home. It is tough to learn that in places, but man, there's no better place to learn than within the military. So that's pretty cool. Sounds like you got some pretty cool parents. Like they obviously got a lot of love. To make such a big family, and and they did all right. You and your brother, you got a little YouTube action going. You guys got a little political commentating going. Rightly named. See what I did there? A little pun. Rightly named, the right
That's
bros.
exactly what you
the right
did.
brothers.
Well played. Well played.
You walk touche. Yeah. So
But
tell us
no,
about that.
growing up as the son of two Air Force veterans, one of the most indispensable things I learned, and I was able to see firsthand, was just how much of a blessing it really is.
You have,
in America.
the
I just completed my 22nd move a few weeks ago, moving to Houston, Texas. But having the chance to move around the world so much at a very young age really provided me with a unique opportunity to see the world through a lens that not everyone is always privy to. It's very easy for what we see right now. We see lots of people right now who feel emboldened to besmirch America and call it an irredeemable racist country. They have no idea really how deplorable it is in other parts of the world and how many people would literally and do try to sacrifice life and limb to even have the privilege of stepping on our shores. So having the chance to live, move, not just across America, but across the world, really did give me that unique perspective. So I think it's incumbent upon anyone who has had military or family military service to speak out, really speak that truth, and shed a light on the fact that it is a blessing to live in this country. Yes, this country has had its problems, as had any other country in history. But what's most remarkable are the strides that we have taken to right those wrongs, specifically even in the last 60 years. We look at the complete 180 that we've done as it related to race relations in this country. You would be hard pressed to find another country that's made so many inroads and so many examples, tangible examples of success in a minority group that my minority group previously was not even allowed to participate in some of these forums in which we have risen to power. So I just think it's disingenuous to see people who go out of their way to cast aspersions on the country without seemingly realizing how much of a blessing it is to be here in the first place.
Well, first and foremost, welcome to the Republic. Wherever you're coming from, great choice. Houston, not a bad little town. However, there's some work to be done there. If you're to the north, you're represented by, this one-eyed guy. Maybe you've heard of him. He was a Navy SEAL. They like to call him Captain America, but not a bad district. But if you're in Houston, man, there's some work to be done there. And I don't want to say her name, but Sheila Jackson. There's some work to be done. And just today, she was on that channel that we like to call CNN, talking about injustice. And man, it's hard to understand what injustice is if you actually haven't seen true injustice. And there's a couple of things. Injustice will be definitely one of the themes of tonight, Troy, because we're going to get back, because we do have some good news where justice is prevailing. But let's you opened it. Let's get into it. A little bit about me. I grew up in a little country to the north, pretty multicultural place. I grew up in the mountains. Our next door neighbors, we lived in a pretty decent part of the town. And our next door neighbors, they were straight up African, both of them from Africa, great family, both doctors. And so I just assumed that everybody that was well educated and highly accomplished, was the same as everybody else. So coming to the U.S., I've faced some changes in that understanding. And man, lately, it seems that what you're saying is absolutely true, and it's sad. It's disheartening to see a country that's achieved so much and traveled so far down a road to like have some barricades put on it and turn people around. Because I don't think what we're hearing about in the media is an actual reflection of the hearts of the American people. When I hear people talk about racial discrimination, like, yeah, I'm sure it exists, but I don't believe it exists in the way. I don't believe that there's law enforcement officers that get up every morning and are like trying to put notches in their service belt. I don't believe that there's, politicians that get up in the morning that are thinking about how that they're going to put the boot, to someone's neck. I just don't believe that to be true, and I haven't witnessed to that, and I haven't seen that demonstrated. But what I have seen is people doing a really strong effort to try and convince us of such. And I'm not saying like, you got some signs in the background, so let's talk about the signs in your background. The word on the street is that is the most racist person in the country. But yet, I don't understand how that's coming, because that's the very first guy to protect historically black colleges. That's the first guy to take Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., sorry for the disrespect, his home and make it a national monument.
Well, we've said it on here before.
Why did it take 50 years for that to happen?
Yeah, we've said it on here before. If he's a racist, he's the worst racist there is, right? Because he's done a lot to show against that. But it's used to.
Right. Well, the mainstream media. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, man, go ahead. It's all you do. Go ahead.
No, the mainstream media is complicit in this overt and willful misrepresentation of the facts as they stand. Some of the facts that y'all mentioned is the fact that he did authorize $250 million per year in perpetuity to fund those historically black colleges and universities. Not just that, but working hard to make sure that the Americans who do want to work, and there are plenty of us out here, that those of us of all stripes, not just African Americans, but Hispanics, women, everyone was winning up until the Chinese coronavirus came to our shores. So the fact of the matter is, what the mainstream media does, what they're very good at doing, is manipulating one's perception of reality and continuing to run based off the fact they tried to presupposition. So what they will do is they'll take different things out of context that President Trump says. One of their favorite cudgels they like to wield is the remarks that he made in the Charlottesville, Virginia incident, in which he mentioned that there were very fine people on both sides. But what they won't tell you is the very next sentence he said, which is when he said, I'm talking about white supremacists for the KKK. They should be condemned to the highest degree. But they frequently will twist or omit information in order to continue to add weight to whatever narrative they've chosen to run with. And what's just most disheartening is with the death grip that they have on so many Americans' minds and mental faculties is such that the average person no longer even desires to question what they are told. And that is how misinformation really does begin to spread. What's interesting is that there's so many individuals now, even in big tech, who will fact check or claim to be independent. And they're always fact checking and trying to poke little holes in what is otherwise a bulletproof argument in order to continue to add greater weight to that narrative. So it's just spiraled out of control at this point. It's very disheartening to see so many not just minorities, but Americans in general who have been misled by the mainstream media machine, which at this point is engaged in Lord knows what else on the side, but who is most focused on ostensibly the destruction of America.
Right. Damani, I want to ask you something. We've talked about it here on the show a few times, and some people look at Toby and I and say, may think, oh, how can you guys, how do you guys have a voice in this, or how do you guys have an opinion? So I want to ask you one thing that I've seen over my 50 plus years on this planet, right? Is a word that has, we've talked about before, that if you called somebody 20 years ago or more, maybe even 15 years ago or more, if you called someone racist, there wasn't too many worse things you could call someone, right? Short of maybe a Nazi or something like. I mean, it was a word that we always hear, we always use the moniker the N word, right? It was essentially the R word. Like, you did not say that to somebody unless you had such vile or such overwhelming proof, but it was not something you tossed around casually. And it seems today that it has gotten so watered down and overused so many times that it does not have the meaning, impact, or even the connotation of what I had before. It's just thrown around nilly willy. I just wonder what your perspective is on that. 'Cause, I mean, that's from my perspective, but I wonder what your feelings on that. Because like I say, growing up and my whole life, that was not something. It's almost something you never heard somebody say. And now it's jokes, it's in songs, and it's said in almost every news channel every day.
That's a good point. When everything is racist, nothing is racist. We're living in a culture now that is overly litigious and which operates from a standpoint of instant retribution. And the best way to get someone canceled, it has been deemed in the eyes of the mainstream media and just the general public, is to use the moniker racist as a descriptive term. But when there is not enough evidence to substantiate or to be enough of a burden of proof to prove that one is a racist, people still run based off of the accusation itself. The accusation has become the condemnation in our modern society. And what's very interesting too is that the left has become very good at Nazi, another very offensive, very charged term, in order to label a certain group of people with whom they disagree. And that's very intentional, because they know that if they label someone as a Nazi, honestly, any thinking person would be against what the Nazis were back in the 1930s. But when you label someone a Nazi, what they're doing is they're very cleverly manipulating you to believe that it's okay to eliminate a Nazi by any means necessary. And we're seeing that emboldening really take shape materially in the world now. People are enacting violence against anyone who dares to show their support for the duly elected president of the United States by going out and treating them as if they were a Nazi, because they truly believe in their minds at this point that we are. And you don't need any evidence to prove that in their eyes. You just need to call someone a Nazi, and then that gives you license in their eyes to act however you would like to. So that just kind of goes to show you, once again, this tactic of subversion or lies by omission or just lies by misrepresentation of the facts of this end.
We started talking about cancel culture really quickly, and I just kind of want to dive in on that because, in the past couple of weeks, we've seen mobs of people going to random places, places of, dining, where you can eat, where you can have fellowship with your friends, and, demanding that patrons that are there, Breonna Taylor, now it's, or then, a couple weeks ago was Jacob Blake. And if you don't say their name, you don't raise your arms, it's a phenomenon, right? Like, you're going to change my opinion and I'm going to join you in solidarity because you're screaming at me. Like, I'm not. That's me, mainly because I'm a sentient, intelligent human being that you're not going to convince me to change my belief on something. But this weird cancel culture, like you brought up tech industry, on Twitter, if you dead name someone, I'm going to use air quotes for those that are watching, you can see them. Those that are listening, just imagine me doing the rabbit ears. But if you dead name somebody, like, you're automatically banned from Twitter. Like, if you were to call the athlete formerly known as Bruce Jenner versus Caitlyn, you're banned for life. And that's just crazy to me because, man, there was this guy, maybe you've heard of him, his name was Cassius Clay, and he was a pretty damn good boxer. And he was a great, representation and example for America. He found religion, not mine, but he found a religion, and, hey, God bless him. Maybe we don't share faith, but it's better to have faith than none at all. And like he chose a path in life that was different than what Troy and I chose in terms of service. And, you know, like, and I don't think that he chose that to just, you know, not have to participate in what was going on in the world at the time. But, you know, like, I shouldn't be thrown in jail for saying this guy accomplished this during this time. And, you know, like that kind of cancel culture, like if you don't subscribe to facts, if feelings outweigh facts, like that's a dangerous place. It's a slippery slope. If I don't agree, like we got this thing going on with Breonna Taylor right now. And, you know, for those that are listening and paying attention, we got law enforcement officers that are being hunted down in the streets because law enforcement officers doing their job that have been I don't want to use the term vindicated because I think that's not the most accurate word, but the grand jury is not charging them in this case due to the law and their adherence to it. It's tragic. You know, I wish there was a different outcome, but like just because you don't like the outcome doesn't make it wrong or unjust in the eyes of the law. Like, and we can't just be like, well, our feelings are this, therefore we're gonna bless off on people executing cops in the streets.
Well,
within 2 weeks, we've had 4 law enforcement officers, innocent people serving the community, doing their best, gunned down.
Right. Damani, I want to ask you how that.
Ahead,
I mean,
sorry.
I want to say just, you know, you've got this video channel. Yeah, the Wright brothers. You got the post going up and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you may not fit the narrative or the stereotype that people think based off your skin color, right? And just like they don't think that the Adjutant General of Kentucky or Diamond and Silk or, you know, anyone else of color that supports President Trump or is a conservative in any area, just as anything but ultra left, they have no shortage, as you know, of bad, slanderous, crude names for anybody. But I mean, do you face this because of your political beliefs, of which you are free to have? You don't fit their narrative of what you should have. Do you face the same kind of cancel culture, the same kind of tossing aside your opinion doesn't matter just because of who you think who you want to vote for or who you believe in?
Yeah, it's just the classic form of identity politics, and that's part of what my channel founded to retaliate against, which is the notion that just by virtue of looking at someone or judging their immutable characteristics, that you must automatically ascribe to a certain political or ideological viewpoint. Make no mistake, it doesn't matter, like, people who have ancestors who really did go through hard times to come to America, or who went through hard times while they were here, being enslaved or what have you. And by the way, slavery was not just a question to the African American community. There were also people who were Chinese who were enslaved, people who were Irish, people who were Italians. The list goes on and on. But what happens now is people automatically assume they can ring a certain bell and then make people of a certain group react a certain way. And that does still smack of slavery and control to me. What I find very interesting is that when there are people out there who expect you to ascribe to a certain viewpoint, that in my mind is the most egregious form of condescension, to think that you can assume that from anyone. Because the way politics should work is everyone should have the ability to think critically and come to their own conclusions of who they support based on what their own unique values are. Even people in America who are black, we litter the socioeconomic spectrum at this point. So to even hear the phrase, I'm sure many of y'all have heard the phrase, the black experience. There is no black experience. There is no white experience. There's no Hispanic experience. You have an American experience that is unique to each and every person, because no two people in this country are completely, universally, incontrovertibly alike. But now we have these people who assume that just because my skin is brown, they think that my experience would be the same as someone who lives in the inner cities of Chicago, or someone who is living in a mansion who's a multimillionaire because they're a professional athlete. The Black experience does not exist. So I hate seeing this innately classist, segregationist behavior rear its ugly head again, because we and our ancestors, the ancestors who were against slavery, the ancestors who were for abolition, they were not all of one race themselves, but they worked together to get to a country because their end goal and their vision of a utopia was a country where you not had the right to vote, but where you were not told how to vote. That's how things used to be, specifically for African Americans. Is we were intimidated, we were marginalized as a group when we did try to secure the right vote. And when I see those black and white moving images of people who are sitting at lunch counters getting cigarettes put out on their bare skin, who are being assaulted just for demanding the dignity and the privilege of being able to vote, they went through that not so that I could one day, 50, 60 years later, accept the lie that I am supposed to vote for someone else because someone else told me to. So I hate that classist behavior, and that's something that I work very, very hard myself to combat on a daily basis.
And it seems that's perpetuated by one candidate, right? When he sits there and says, if you have to think about who you're voting for, then you ain't black. I mean, that is from the mouth of the leader of a party and the candidate of a party to say something like that. It's perpetuating it without even hiding it.
Troy, I want you to rewind it back 4 years. Like, it's not just this candidate, this election. Let's just go back to the last one. In the last one, you were told if you were a woman, there's a special place in hell for you if you don't vote for a woman. And in this one, you're told, like, well, if you don't vote for him, well, you're not black. Like, that's the most ridiculous bullshit I've ever heard. Like, you can't tell somebody, like, well, because you originated in Canada, you must always vote this way. It's the most, it's ridiculous. It's absolute bullshit. It makes no logical sense. Like, we have this beautiful political system. The reason why I came to this country, this beautiful political system that says the people are represented, it's a republic, and you select a person that represents you the best. Like, not because, like, well, he dyed his hair purple, I like the color purple, I need to go with that guy or that girl. It's so bullshit. But every big cycle, every presidential cycle for sure, like, somebody's being told that. Some group is being told that. And instead of, like, talking to the people, they're talking to a group. And that's for the bullshit. Like, that's the division. That's the decisiveness. That's this identity politics that Damani was talking about. Like, we got to get away from that. We got to be like, hey, let's talk about the economy.
I want to ask Damani real quick.
Honest question about it.
I want to ask Damani real quick because you're out there. Your videos, your stuff is really very. We talk about politics on here a lot, but it's not our whole topic. But you're hearing from a lot of folks, and we keep talking about the silent majority. I know I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this people that come up to me and say, I'm voting for Trump. They don't want to say it, right? They don't want to be out loud. What are you seeing and hearing from people? Are you seeing that silent majority of people are just staying quiet? They're not putting a sign in their yard, but that they're going one way and not another?
Yes, I see that even more so now than I did 4 years ago, because this fear of being publicly in support of our president has been going on for about half a decade at this point, because he was instantly and immediately vilified by the mainstream media, and those who chose to support him or who deigned it wise to support him were immediately labeled and ostracized, or the cancellation attempts began for them as well. People have been doxxed just for supporting this candidate. And at certain points, people, not because they are afraid per se, but because they need to have a job to take care of their families, take care of their children. They know that in this current climate, they're not at liberty to share publicly who they are in support of. But that's why the only poll that matters is the one that is going to be taken on November 3rd of this year. And there's a lot of people right now, even if they were called and contacted by pollsters, who would be loath to actually say who they truly support for fear of that social retribution or ostracization. So what we're going to see, I believe, this election, and I think the reason the left is panicking so hard is because they have shown their hand as being hypocritical. Going back to the point made earlier, They ran on this platform for the last 4 years that Donald Trump and essentially white men in general are the bane of modern existence. And then out of all the candidates that they had run for president, they settled on the 77-year-old older white man who has probably the most checkered past of any candidate on that stage, and that's a pretty high bar. But now they're assuming that people are going to just throw their support behind him without checking his track record as well. So what we're going to see in November, unless the left does try to cheat and steal the election, and they are trying to, by the way, because they know they cannot win it outright, there's going to be an overwhelming landslide as the majority voices what they really believe at the ballot box where it really counts.
And you know what? I think it's going to be a landslide too, and I'm not just wishing that. I'm looking also 4 years ago, and what we're seeing now is I was just talking to someone. Biden just did came outside the basement and went down to North Carolina. It was introduced to a speaking engagement by a major NBA star and had 10 people in the audience. 10, right? Donald Trump has 10,000 that can't even get tickets to get inside of his venues. And, you just don't see it. It's been 43 or 44 days now since Kamala Harris was introduced as his VP running mate. She has not taken one question from the media. She hasn't taken any questions from the press. I mean, Biden only shows up like 3 days a week. When you see that kind of turnout or for one side and lack of turnout from another, to me, it just screams that there's going to be a landslide. That it is so that people can't have any confidence in someone if they're not willing to leave the house for the day and just go listen to him speak. I mean, that speaks a lot. Not much different than it did 4 years ago, because we saw the same thing when we were saying, "Where's all the Hillary signs?" I was seeing lots of Trump signs. I wasn't seeing lots of Hillary signs. It was almost the same kind of thing.
I want a caveat on that, Damani, because I know we don't have you for much longer. Next Tuesday, the first questions are going to actually be asked. If you were permitted to ask a question, what is your question for these two candidates?
Oh, that's a good question there. I would say probably to ask Joe Biden, I'd probably ask him why he feels he has the right to pander to minorities, shamelessly so. One example, just by him walking up to the stage and playing Despacito, a Hispanic song to a largely Hispanic audience, in an attempt to curry favor with them. I would ask him why he feels the need, I phrase it this way. I would say, why are you making these grandiose overtures to minority demographics when your own track record is part of the reason, specifically the 1994 crime bill, why a lot of minorities unfortunately did have to go through the loss of a parental figure perhaps because of the crime bill that you authored? I would ask him that question. For President Trump, I would ask him, what is your vision, your forward-looking vision to move beyond COVID-19? At what point are we going to say enough is enough? Because Americans, we are poised and ready to unleash the greatness of this country. But at what point will we essentially have to enforce more measures to ensure that the average American is not going to be left out in the cold, essentially, in the economic cold, because of these draconian authoritative measures being enforced by the leaders of these blue states, these blue cities? At what point can we expect to return to some form of normalcy and stop being cowed or terrified of a virus that has been proven time and time again to not be nearly as life-threatening to the entire general populace as it has been couched by the mainstream media?
No, that's those are good. I mean, those are good questions. Sorry for putting you on the spot there. But hopefully it gets some people thinking. I mean, that was a good question, Toby. I would like a lot of people, our listeners and viewers, to sit there and think, if I had a chance next Tuesday, if they allowed me to call in, what would I ask, right? I mean, that's an important thing, because I think it puts people what's important to them.
And the reason I asked that question, and Damani, I do apologize for putting you on the spot, because that was a sharp shot. But we need to be asking questions. We're not asking any questions. All we're doing right now as a society and as a culture is slinging mud. We're looking for chinks in other people's armor. and we're drilling down on that, and we're slinging mud. We're not asking the important questions about what really affects our lives. And like, one, I want to compliment you on your approach there, because, well, even though you got signs in the background there, like that's a good punch. You didn't pull it. Like, hey, I'm a small business owner. I want to know. I really want to know. I want to know that my employees that we have they have a future. Like, their food depends on our performance, and this is a tough market space to be working in right now. Like, we need to be asking questions, not making statements. And two, and this is the problem with journalism. Journalism is supposed to objectively produce information by asking questions to find an objective answer. And we're not getting that. What we're getting is like, hey, let me tee up this talking point. Two, I mean, you can pick, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You can just tee up media from both sides, and everyone's on the talking point. And it's the exact same wording. And apparently I'm not on that email list because, like, I don't get the good words. But like, everybody does it. But no one asks actual questions. And when the media do ask questions, it's for this gotcha. It's not to explore. It's not to create dialogue.
Or it's a softball. Or it's a softball to let somebody get a pass.
Yeah. Like, I enjoy. There's the new press secretary. I enjoy her mainly because she spends probably the last 30 to 45 seconds of each briefing letting them know the questions that they forgot to ask, because she's like, Middle East peace, like no one was interested in asking about that. Kind of a big deal, like, whatever it might be, like, no one wanted to know. Instead, it was like, you're asking me about how he touched his mask, like the most inconsequential thing. It's this gotcha moment. And I really appreciate that you actually had the presence of mind to ask a question, but you've thought about it because you're passionate about what's going on. You're an extremely well-spoken man. All right. Your parents, when they raised you, they took the time and effort to make sure that you educated yourself. Your vocabulary is good. It's a change for Troy and I. You haven't dropped a single F-bomb, which is amazing because this show is like usually littered with them.
Last week was definitely no exception.
Last week we might have hit a record, and I don't think either one of us said one.
We didn't. Yeah, it wasn't us. It was our guest.
But when can we look forward to you doing more in leadership than a YouTube channel? Because you have a really good voice. You're thoughtful about what you're doing, and you're living in a district that really could use some common sense. And all it takes for common sense to succeed is communication, and you're a pretty good communicator.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My parents instilled that public speaking skill set in me from a young age, and I've taken it and tried to make the best of it. But what I would say is, as far as future leadership, right now I do feel that in this space that I'm in, I am being used by God, I believe, to champion this message in the field, in the space that I am right now. But I'm not ruling out what could possibly happen in the future, because one of the best things that I think we can do as patriots who love this country is to answer that call to serve. Obviously, both of my parents answered the call to serve our country in the military, and my older brother and sister-in-law and others in my family did as well. But that call comes in different forms. For some people, they're called to serve in the public forum. We are called to serve in the private forum. We're all serving to make this country great in our own way. So in the future, it really just depends on what doors God chooses to open for me. For now, I'm grateful for the platform He's allowed me to amass. I'm determined to use that to the best of my ability. And then perhaps in a few years down the road, I might step through another door that He opens. It just depends on God's timing and everything else lining up as it should. But for right now, I'm grateful to do what I do. I'm grateful to commune and interact with patriots like yourself. Thank y'all so much for having me, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for all three of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, before we let you go, I just want to say, how can people find you? Where can they find you? Listen to your opinions and that stuff. I want to make sure all of our viewers and listeners know that. Where's the best place they can get you?
Sure. So for those interested on YouTube, you can find my channel at The Wright Brothers. That's one that is also co-founded by my older biological brother, Trey, who lives in San Antonio. That's one forum. You can also find me on Twitter at the Damani Felder, TheDamaniFelder. Same handle for Instagram, the Damani Felder. Same handle for TikTok, if that's your fancy. I use the enemy's tools against them, the Damani Felder. And for Parler, you can find me at the Damani Felder. And then on Facebook, you can find me at Damani Bryant Felder. I think that's the entire list of social media.
I think you have the biggest list of socials of any guest we've ever had. You're the first one that's been on Parler.
I was just about to say, like, the Parler's like this, like, it's the speakeasy, right? Parler's like the political speakeasy. People are like, I know a lot of people on Parler. I'm on Parler. I like to follow people on Parler. I feel people feel more open to be honest there. I don't agree with everything I see on there, but I appreciate people like having the freedom. You're the first person to be like, oh, and on Parler. Like, usually I was like, oh man, isn't there a secret handshake for that? Like, before it's like.
But no, you're awesome. Well, hey, Damani, thank you so much for coming on.
I'm trying to spread myself out and around.
Yeah, sorry, man. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead. We got a little bit of a lag.
No, you're fine. I was just saying, I try to spread myself around because you never know which big tech company is going to cancel you or deactivate you one day. So in my mind, the way I look at it, the more platforms I'm on, the harder I am to get rid of.
That's true. That's true. And I hope people tune in, check you out on all those. We're going to get those up in our chat. Hopefully Rob can get that up in the chat. I mean, watch some of your stuff is great. And, it's, again, like Toby was saying, it's another voice people need to hear. If anything, they just realize, oh, you mean someone that, thinks like me, looks like me, acts like me, can think how they want. I don't have to follow in line with what I'm being told to do, because like you guys talked about, and that's the awesomeness of this freedom is to make that decision. I mean, when we spend countless lives in another country so they can walk miles through IED infested roads to stick their finger in ink to vote, you would think the people of this country would take it a little bit more seriously and put some more thought into it. And I think voices like yours hopefully are opening people up to that.
Yeah.
But well, hey, Damani, thank you so much. We don't want to keep any more. We know we kept you quite a bit, and we started a little bit late. But thank you so much for coming on. And know for sure you're definitely welcome back. We'd love to have you back.
Always welcome back. Always welcome back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank y'all so much. Let's do what we can to make this country great and keep it great long into the future.
Awesome.
All right,
dude.
brother.
Thanks, man. You have a good night, buddy.
All right. You too. God bless.
Yeah, God bless. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. There we go. That's you need to check them out. I couldn't remember every one of those links, but just look for the Wright Brothers on YouTube.
Rob's doing a really good job in the chat room. He's got them. He's got it all up there. So if you're listening, you can find Damani, on the Twitter at Damani at the Damani Felder, and then on Instagram at the Damani Felder. If Parler's an interesting thing, man. Like, we haven't really had a chance to talk about it, but Parler's an interesting thing. I've been seeing more and more people like diving into it, and it's a weird landscape for someone to get into, but apparently there's some money behind it. I wish them success, not for political reasons, but just for the purpose of capitalism, the purpose of competition. Iron sharpens iron, man. I believe that in life. I like competition. I don't like monopolies. I like people, challenging each other. I like adversity, and I like people, bringing out the best in each other. Competition brings out the best in each other, unless you're the first period of the Dallas Stars. It doesn't bring out the best in you. But
no, it doesn't. And how are they doing there, Toby?
Yeah, it's 2-1.
Yeah.
Or 1-2, depending what side you're on. I'm on the 1-2 side.
You're on the 1-2. Are they still piping in all the sounds from the fans that aren't there? I haven't watched.
Not really. I'll be frank and honest with you. I'm enjoying the fact that we can enjoy the sport just as a sport. I love, I'm a season ticket holder, to the affiliate here, the AHL team, the Texas Stars. We sit close enough
because it's not a big place, that we can hear the on-ice interaction. You and I are both hockey guys. You're a coach. You played, your son refs now that he doesn't play, and it's to hear that on-ice interaction, to know what the nuance of the game, it's really good, and to see it at this level, not being drowned out by some like organ music is great.
You don't hear the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a little bit about that, but really you're just seeing the sport in its raw form. And
I imagine for the players, it's got to be
feel.
like a big pickup game, because like there's no one cheering. It's just got to be hearing ice being cut and coaches yelling. I mean,
yeah. And I imagine that makes it an extremely hard dynamic to play in. You don't get that momentum. You don't.
Yeah.
Like there's this swing with your team, but
if you don't have tens of thousands of fans screaming your nickname or something like that,
yeah.
right? It's got to be.
Bringing more out of you. But I got to tell you, man, I really enjoyed Damani. Great guy. Love what him and his brother are doing. But it is so nice in any situation to see someone with the moral and character, the moral conviction and the character, just stand up and be like, you know what? I think this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And well,
we're seeing more and more, right, of from folks, of minorities across the board that are standing up and saying, hey, don't pigeonhole me, right? It started kind of with Diamond and Silk, were probably the first pair that really became YouTube famous. And we got the Wright brothers, we got the Hodge twins, right? We got
Trump
2020. Yeah. You got more, and it's not just. I mean, there's a number that are across the different social mediums and stuff that are just saying, "Hey, I'm not going to fall in line with this stereotype that you say I have to fall in line with, or that some candidate says."
I'm going to take it one step further, because I'm so tired of this identity person as a human being. I'm just tired of it. We should be able to be like, I believe this. And it doesn't matter what your background is. It shouldn't matter what your pigmentation is. It shouldn't matter what your gender is. You should just be able to say, I believe this. And that's what it is. That's why we have the First Amendment. That's what makes this country different than anywhere else in the planet. We have the most important thing. The number one thing is you have the right to believe what you want to believe. You have the right to think what you want to think. As long as you're not wantonly trying to endanger the masses, you have the right to say whatever you want. And, that's what makes, and I feel like people don't understand. And the people that bitch about America the most are the people that exercise that the most.
Yes. Well, it's also it's the oxymoron, right? Of the people that have the coexist sticker on their car absolutely do not want to coexist with everybody, right?
Correct. The people that want to defund the police are the first to be like, "Don't touch me! That's assault!" No, defund the police. I'm just gonna punch you in the face. I don't want to be touched. Yeah. That's not how it works. But man, let's hammer through some things really fast. I wanted to ask Damani a couple of these questions, but we were late. We only had him for a short period of time. Man, some big things have happened. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I really loved and appreciated seeing the clip of a reporter telling the president of her passing. Not because I was joyful of her passing, because there was a genuine moment and an opportunity for him to be what we expect him to be. I'll probably, I'll probably lose a couple friends here, but man, I don't like the way he carries himself on some things, man. Individuals. Sometimes it's funny. Every time he says something about Rosie O'Donnell, I smile because I'm like, that's a good burn.
And, you know, like, I'm not a fan of John McCain's politics. I was not a fan of John McCain's politics. But, man, I respect any man that doesn't leave where the Hanoi Hilton because he, like, stood with the code of conduct. Like, as a war fighter, as a dude, I'm like, man, like, that's pretty solid. And to be emulated and be proud of and to be honored and to be cherished. But just because you did something right one time doesn't give you a golden ticket for the rest of your behavior in life. Like, the dude, you know, got us involved in some BS with sports. He did some shady shit behind the scenes. He sold some people out, like, in politically, not militarily, politically. And, you know, so it's like, I don't always appreciate the way the president has talked about certain people that way.
But to be fair, I got one over here in the corner too. You could kind of what our guest said last week, but I won't say it on air. But similar to what he said off air, right? You could do 1,000 things right, you do one thing wrong, right? That's awesome what he did, but it doesn't give him an excuse to. Okay, I respected his service and what he did. That doesn't mean I have to like and respect much else, right?
Right. No, and you know, like, when I thought he was getting the news about, you know, the Supreme Court justice passing, I was like, RBG. I was like, man, like, this is probably going to be a burn. And no, like,
he was very respectful. Yes.
Nothing but class. And you know, it's like, oh, there you go. Like, he's got a little in him. Like,
today when he goes and pays his respects, he gets heckled and protesters are yelling and heckling, and they can't even he is taking time to pay respects to a you know, the Supreme Court justice. Is not a lot of people have that on a resume. That's a pretty exclusive job in this country.
But
you can't even do that.
We can throw that one out, though, bro, because let's be honest. Let's just throw that one out. That's not even a good talking point, because he went there to pay respects. They went there to protest him.
Right.
They weren't there for her.
Right.
Like, and if they try and tell you, like, no, they were like, oh, here's an opportunity, because they're like, we know he's going, so we're going to go there and we're going to, like, disrespect her and everything that she did so that we can throw a shot at this dude. And that just shows, like, they actually don't care about her.
Right.
You know, like, he even in his thing, he was like, I didn't always agree with her, and a lot of times I don't. But what an amazing woman, what an amazing life she led.
But then again, you're taking on John McCain. Taking on John McCain, they wanted, you know, all the rights and privileges and the use of aircraft and everything for his funeral, and he approved all that, right? And said they could have her. And even recently, Cindy McCain comes out and says, you know, she's for Joe Biden, and he's just like, well, you know, good luck with Joe, good luck with Sleepy Joe. You know, he just like, she's a widow of a U.S. senator and person that served his country. He's like, all right, well, you know, she's not a big fan of mine, I'm not of hers. Good luck with Sleepy Joe. You know,
right.
He seems to be starting to take maybe, I don't know if it's called the high road, but a different road than probably he did 4 years ago, I think.
Well. And you know, but here's the thing: it's like, maybe he's always been this way, and we're just now seeing it. Like, I think about myself and I don't mean this to be egotistically, but I think about myself and, like, how I conduct myself. There are times where I know that I'm extremely compassionate, empathetic, sympathetic to folks. And there's times where I'm absolutely dismissive, like Cab Scouts. Totally dismissive to Cab Scouts. But I love them.
That was too funny.
You know,
yeah.
No, but on, like, a serious note, I know that there are people that I'm deeply compassionate for, whether I know them or not. And there are people that I don't agree with their struggle. However, I respect that they've had it, and I acknowledge it, and I empathize. And, you know, you don't always get to see Toby behind not on this. You don't get to see Troy not on this. And so maybe he's been like this, and we're, you know, they've painted him in a really,
he's absolutely right when he says that no president's been treated the way that he's been treated.
Well, let me tell you, right? You know, so they had this whole fake news thing came up where they claim these claims, right? Unnamed sources that he said these despairing things about when he was about World War I soldiers, right? When all that kind of stuff that happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It was all
right?
bullshit.
Right. You know how many people, friends of mine, some who I thought were really pretty hard Republicans, some people I knew were kind of center, but folks who got, and I love this about some of my family and friends who maybe lean a little bit to the left. The second anything comes up where it looks like he says something about a veteran, they love to run to me in a second and say, "Did you hear about that? What do you think about that? How do you justify that?" You know, they love to. If it's a veteran, they love to come to me as that demographic representative to them to say, "Okay, how can you still support him? He said this, right?" And what I've said to them, and I've said to several over the last several weeks, is, I know enough people close to him, really close to him, and enough people that have been around him, friends of mine and yours both, Toby, that I know all that's BS, because I know what's said behind the scenes and not on the record and not in front of the mic, and how he acts, and we know about the stories of what he's done. That I know that until you give me a source and you get it on tape, I know it's all BS, because I know that's not the way he thinks, right? And now anytime you hear unnamed source, I immediately toss that out the window. I'm like, it's, you know, put a name to it, or don't even say anything at all.
If you're not man enough or woman enough or human enough, whatever the term is, to like stand by it and put your name to it, you can't expect me to take it in and make it part of my personal fabric.
Well,
I had a lot of friends. That were like, "I can't believe he said that." And I'm like, "You're right. I can't either."
I truly can't.
I'm pretty sure he didn't.
You know, maybe 3.5
Because,
years
like,
ago, maybe 3 years ago, we would have maybe. But you know what? Them little boys have cried wolf so many times. There's so many accusations that have happened in the last 4.5 years, really, about him, that have been found to be that have completely been unfounded and untrue. Not just him, Justice Kavanaugh, anyone else, or anyone that's close to him. That now people go, the second they hear something that it's I can't believe they did that or said that, and it's tied to an unnamed or anonymous source, they've burned that bridge. They've cried wolf so many times, everyone just like, yeah, whatever. Like,
no, I absolutely agree with the fact that, you know, we talked about it earlier. You call everyone a racist. Well, now they're just a member of a club. You know, they're not a fringe element. They're not somebody that, you know, should be admonished. They're not somebody that, you know, should be identified as outside the norm. The sad part is, like, we have put so much misinformation out there. I sat the other morning, and this is my routine a little bit. I try to, when available, I try to watch a certain amount of time of Fox, and I try to watch a certain amount of time of CNN, like visually watching it as it's live, as it's coming across. And the other day I was watching Fox, and they were talking about the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and, you know, it was kind of touching, and it was, you know, a couple cool little things, and there were a couple other little topics going on with the wildfires and stuff like that. And then I switch over because my timer went off. I switch over. I start watching CNN. As I'm watching CNN, it's about COVID, and the CDC has come out and with their new COVID thing, and they had I counted 6 experts that spoke on the same basic topic of COVID, and they clearly had talking points, and they were talking about how droplets can travel further than 6 feet. They linger in the air longer, and it's, you know, like, everything that we're doing isn't helping. In fact, we're probably making it worse. And, you know, the problem is worse than we thought. And, you know, the CDC. And I go to the CDC website because, like, well, you quoted them, you're using them as a source. And I believe that
I should try and get my information from the source as much as possible. So I go to the CDC website, not the John Hopkins numbers that are in the column on the right-hand side of every CNN screen, but I go to the CDC website, and in fact, I had to read it 3 or 4 times because it was the exact opposite of what all their experts were saying on the news, on CNN. It was the exact opposite. And then I think it was you or somebody else shared with us in our little group chat, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, this Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. It was a Wall Street Journal article saying that, there was some misinformation put out, but, they got the right information. And yes, the CDC does not believe this, and this. And there was no correction.
No,
there was no
CNN. You mean from CNN?
So,
they didn't come back and say there was a mistake. No, they didn't do it.
No. But here's the thing, and I'm using CNN as an example, and before everyone gets Fox does this too, everybody does this. We're so used to just being able to put information out there, and we put information out there, and people react to it without taking the time to process it, think it through, and be like, does this make sense? This the commander-in-chief of the United States military, the greatest military on earth, with one of the most storied military accomplishments worldwide of all time. I think that the people laying in Flanders fields were suckers and losers. Did we take the 10 seconds to process that before we nope, Trump said it, must be bad. I'm not going to take that vaccine because this guy said so. Are you kidding me? I had tons of leaders in the military that I thought were horrible douchebags, not very smart, and in some cases utter pieces of shit. And others, I had just amazing human beings with absolute amazing levels of intelligence that I learned so much from. There were dudes that were idiots and crap that I liked, and there were dudes that I respected the shit out of and I really disliked.
Yes. In the long run, are probably the ones you still respect today.
Yeah.
Because you
don't have to like the person that's in charge of you.
Yeah.
As long as they're looking out for your best interests. And man, to see the blatant lies that are being put out. And this is going to start sounding like a Trump campaign ad. But I want to talk about campaign ads here in a second because there's 2 hot ones out there right now. But you got Biden saying, well, if only Trump would have warned us during the State of the Union. I don't know, I watch the State of the Union, you watch the State of the Union. In the State of the Union, he actually talked about working with China on the coronavirus in January.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what they were worried about? They were worried about that watershed moment of ripping up the speech, right?
Yeah.
They were ready for that. That's all they talked about.
But you have a political candidate coming out and saying things that are absolute, blatant, provable lies, and no one is blinking an eyelash.
No, just like the recent comment of, had he done more, he could have saved all 200,000 lives. He had the power, right?
Yeah, I got the power. I mean, that's about as intelligent as Kanye West saying Hurricane Katrina hit land and killed people because George W. didn't like black people.
Yeah,
it's the most. But no one when it comes from someone like Kanye, you're like, well,
he's an idiot. Okay,
he's an idiot. So they don't care. But we are so used to people filling us with unvetted BS information and just sucking it in and just taking it in, drinking it in. That's part of the problem. We have lost the ability to think, and we're not teaching our children to critically think. And my wife and I had a conversation today because what's more important, going to school and learning something, or potentially, maybe being infected with something. Like, and, is the school going to tell and notify everybody every time, like, someone gets, I don't know, lice? Holy crap. Like, we got to, like, part of our family, our school district family today fell ill with da-da-da-da-da. Like, I don't need to know when little Billy takes a shit. I don't need to know when Johnny pukes. I don't need to know when Sally, gets lice. I don't need to know that, because it doesn't affect my child's education. Like, these are all just parts of life. And the information that we're putting out, we've devalued it so much that when you say the CDC says the opposite of what they're saying, like, you don't care. You just don't care.
Well, they keep reducing their trustworthiness every time it survives on a surface. It doesn't survive on a surface. You need 6 feet. Oh, we need 12 feet. Oh, it does this. Oh, it doesn't do that. It's like the people are already bitter enough about this whole thing, but now they start hearing that and they go, okay, these are supposed to be the experts. People are putting them in the same boat as the WHO and go, yeah, they don't really know what the hell they're talking about either, right? I'm in charge of, which we all, right? It's not the government's job to keep worry about, isn't it? What is it? My body, my choice, right? It's not the government's job. It's they're not here to keep me safe, right?
But move on from the coronavirus. Look at what's going on with Breonna Taylor. Look what's going on with George Floyd. Let's look at all these things. When we mislead people, when we make an effort to mislead people, we can't be surprised when some knucklehead thinks he's doing the right thing by gunning somebody down.
Right. Well, you had the guy in Minneapolis who killed himself. And because cops were approaching to arrest him, it turned into riots because they said the cops shot him. And that became the narrative. That was rumor control, man. The Army, we used to think we had bad rumors in the Army. It's nothing to what happened. I mean, it doesn't even hold a candle to what's today. Someone kills himself, and all of a sudden there's riots and burning down cities because someone said the cops
kill himself. Corona killed them.
Well, yeah, and then there's this stuff with prior to the AG of Kentucky coming out yesterday and talking, I had no idea her boyfriend shot one of the cops. Right, the narrative I had been fed since this whole Breonna Taylor thing was that the cops busted in the door and she was sitting on her couch eating some cereal, watching cartoons, and they just gunned her down. Right, that was the whole thing. No. And so now, hold on, let me say. Now, there's definitely some issues with that because they do have a castle doctrine, right? Even New York has castle doctrine. And if they did not alert themselves, even though there seems to be some dispute about whether they knocked and announced or whatever is witness, but the person is told, if they don't know who's coming in and they think someone's breaking in, it's totally their right to be ready and armed if they're a lawful gun owner. So that part is like the guy did what I would think a lot of people would do if they did not announce themselves and he didn't know they were cops. But he got a shot off first, hit one of the cops in the leg. They unloaded pretty good, and one of them probably shot pretty errantly, which is not uncommon for a lot of police. They don't get a lot of range time like people think they do.
Yeah.
But that story that I heard the AG, that what he laid out in the whole grand jury stuff yesterday was totally different than I'd ever heard. It really sounded bad before.
No, and then how dare he say that, because apparently he traded sides, which is a whole different subject. No, castle laws, I believe strongly in it. I believe your home is your castle. I believe you have the right to defend yourself. But that's not what happened. And on top of it, even though that's not what happened, he still didn't get charged for shooting the cop.
That's right.
We're normally let's just go ahead and say if you think the cop got thrown a bone, that's nothing in comparison to the bone that he got thrown for shooting a cop.
Now, he's gotten jacked up on some other stuff later, but that's very telling. That's very telling, right? Because if they
Correct.
thought in any way that he knew and shot a cop, they would have charged him in a New York second. But you're right, no charges against him because he was lawful within his actions if he had no idea they were cops.
And let's also dive in a little bit deeper. The warrant was for the premise.
Right.
And who was responsible for that premise? Whose name's on the dotted line of that premise? So there was enough justification for a judge to sign not just a warrant, but a no-knock warrant for that property, for that premise. But according to third-party witnesses, they actually didn't execute a no-knock warrant. They actually executed a knock warrant.
Several times, and announced themselves a couple times as per an independent witness, right?
But the point I'm trying to make is we always just rush to judgment.
Right.
We look at the Covington kid, like that son of a gun, and now that kid's rich.
Yeah. We look at the Kyle Rittenhouse case, right? The 11-minute video that just came out.
We watching that video. It is obvious that kid should not have had the firearm. And he's going to pay for that. But everything that he did, justified.
Let me go on the record here. He had better fire discipline than the cops in Louisville. Just saying.
100%.
He hit every target. Right.
And responsibly.
And responsibly. Yes.
And was remorseful, and called for help.
Yeah.
And tried turning himself in. And all he was trying to do was do the right thing.
Yeah. I just want to point out that he had better fire, he had better shot control, and even while falling, even while being hit in the head with a skateboard, even while having Molotov cocktails thrown at him. Yeah.
No, he's a blue chip recruit.
He's the guest speaker at SHOT Show next year, I think. I'm just saying.
Yeah. If I was his PR person or his lawyer, I'd shy away from that one, but definitely maybe the NRA. But we're so quick to rush to judgment. Hands up, don't shoot. All this division, all these things that have led to everything that's going on in this country right now is a result of bad information.
I've said it 1,000 times, dude. I say it to my soldiers. I've said it to I say it to my employees. I say it to my sons. 99% of the world's problems in this world are caused by lack or miscommunication. Wars are started over miscommunication. It really comes down to speaking clearly and being understood.
They lit Ferguson on fire, and martyred a guy
based on
that ended up being once it came out, and man, I got to tell you, in the Army, I saw it. I'll tell the story really quickly, and then we'll jump into something else because I know we got to get going. But we had a guy in our unit. There was a stabbing in our barracks. It happened in the room right next door to me. I'd just come back from JRTC. We came back in the middle of the night, and it was too late for me to leave. So I just crashed out for a couple hours. And I woke up. The MPs were there, and they'd arrested or detained, taken into custody one of our soldiers. Another one of our soldiers was in the hospital fighting for his life because he'd been hurt badly in a knife fight. And the soldier that was taken into custody, he did not say anything. He exercised his right to remain silent, asked for legal representation. And the kid that was in the hospital, as soon as he was able to talk, he started talking and started spinning a story. The chain of command immediately got behind that story and supported him because he was the alleged victim. And the kid that was taken into custody remained in custody for months in a regional correctional facility in the military, which is no joy. And then when it comes out in the court martial and they bring in blood spatter experts and they do all that, they find out that kid was about to becoming the victim of a rape, and defended himself against the guy that we'd hailed as a victim and a hero.
And then that poor kid that, spent all that time in prison, all he wanted to do was like serve his country and go to war with us and deploy with us. And he wasn't welcome in our unit because his reputation would be ruined, because everyone thought he was this rapist. And in fact, he was the victim. He was the actual victim in the case. And it was all because of misinformation. That guy's life, career, everything, reputation ruined.
Right.
And man, nothing bothers me more than when people rush to judgment. It's like, take a few moments, take a deep breath. Let's get actual intelligence on it, and then move forward. Which brings me to
the big news.
Good news.
Yeah, that's right.
Good news, big news. We have talked about this on the show. We should have opened up with it, but we were late. Then, we had Damani. So, but hey, everyone listening.
We've talked about it on
really
this show.
News.
We've talked about it on the shows we've had before this show.
Yeah,
for
we
years.
have talked about this many, many times for years. Because for 12 years, I believe, 11 years, one of the finest NCOs that I had the pleasure of serving with, I looked up to. He inspired me to be an Audie Murphy member, an amazing infantry guy, and famous as a young private for, taking time to mentor us and to teach us. And he would always say, all this and a paycheck too. And he truly believed it, man. Like, that dude drank the Kool-Aid. He was all about the Army. He was a fantastic NCO, a true non-commissioned officer, exactly what the creed of the non-commissioned officer is. He was that guy. He embodied it. He lived it. It oozed out of him. And I'm talking about none other than Ranger First Sergeant John Hatley. And he was wrongfully convicted and sent to Leavenworth Federal Correctional Facility for a war crime that never happened.
Yep.
That there was zero physical proof, forensic proof. His adjudication was predicated on the story of a compromised person, a young soldier caught smuggling drugs while mid-tour leave back in the country.
Smuggling drugs into another country. Yes.
Into another country, got caught and offered up this story of a war crime in exchange for immunity on his. No corroborating evidence. Zero corroborating evidence. No forensic evidence. And his story that he spun was that First Sergeant Hatley, during the catch and release program, where we would catch somebody that had committed a crime or an attack, and there wasn't enough physical evidence for him to be detained by the Iraqis, was to be released. And so this guy was caught, digging a hole and placing a bomb. He had residue, all that stuff. And, they took him to what we would call the cage, which was the detention center that the Iraqi government were in charge of. The Iraqi guards were thing, and they were like, there's not enough evidence, and they released him. And, and we all knew that system was corrupt. They said that instead of releasing him, they took him to an undisclosed location, took him behind a Humvee, executed him, and dumped him in a canal. Only one person said that. Everybody else said, no, they took him to this location and they released him, but that body was never found. That person was never listed as missing. Zero proof or evidence of anything like that took place. Just the testimony of a guy that got caught smuggling drugs and was exchanging that information on a deal. And First Sergeant Hatley has been a prisoner ever since. He was issued life. I want to say that this was under the previous administration. It was an abomination to justice. It was one of the greatest injustices of all. And we got good news today that he is going to be paroled, and that they are going to deeply and truly, for the first time, evaluate his case.
For possible, is going for full pardon, right?
Full pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon. Going towards a full pardon.
Do you know how this came? I saw the news today too. Do you know how this came about? Is there any idea how this all of a sudden?
I do not, but I imagine it's because so many of these cases from the previous administration have the holes have just been poked through them.
Right.
And so, like, just really, just really excited that we're gonna look at this properly. And for those listening that aren't military, please understand that the United States Penal Code and the Uniform Code of Military Justice are not the same.
Nope. Not by any stretch of imagination.
And because people are like, there's no way a guy got convicted and sent to life in a federal penitentiary because one man said one thing and it was uncorroborated with no physical evidence, no circumstantial, no fucking evidence other than the word of one person that was a compromised person. There's no way in the civilian judicial system, the United States Penal Code, that would happen. That wouldn't even get past a grand jury. Like, no.
It probably wouldn't even get it past a district attorney. He wouldn't even bring it to. They wouldn't even bring it. They wouldn't take that case.
No, because there's absolutely no way that they would waste time and resources to even deal with something that they can't even prove. Like, they convicted a man and sentenced him to life in prison for a crime they can't even prove happened. Think about that. Like, let that sink in for a second. A man got sentenced to life in a federal penitentiary, making big rocks into little rocks, and then little rocks, you hit them so many times they start thinking they're medium-sized rocks again. For something that no one can prove even happened. Like, usually, like, for someone to be convicted of murder, there has to be a body.
Or a weapon, or both.
For someone to be convicted of a theft had to have occurred. Property must be missing. Like, none of that. That's like grabbing someone in a store with an empty shopping cart, accusing them of shoplifting and stealing while still in the store with zero merchandise on them, and saying, but I know you did. I saw you do it. One person. But you're like, there's no camera, there's no missing, like, nothing's taken. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And that's the flaw, and we've talked about this several times on the show, within the Uniform Code of Military Justice. But we got the good news today. We got the good news that on October 15th, Ranger Hatley will be paroled. And man, God bless him.
All we can do now is hope for a full pardon, restoration of his rank and pay and honors and everything else.
Well, first and foremost, I hope there's a restoration of his soul.
Yes.
Money's money, man. Like,
well, I mean, also you serve your whole career.
Money,
you serve your whole career, and you get the diamond in your first round. They bust you down to E1, and take everything.
Yeah. But like, dude, he's been in not just any penitentiary. He's been in Leavenworth, man. I hope there's a restoration of his soul. Right. I hope God is with him. I hope he's, speaking into his heart and making it better for him, because, like, bro, like, you got to find forgiveness for that. I'd be trying to burn that mother down.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I got that kind of forgiveness in my heart.
Right.
I mean, I'm having a hard time. I found out Michael Yon's on U.S. soil, and I'm thinking about, like, going to Portland.
Yeah. and not to get a coffee either. Not to get a coffee. Yes. I wouldn't be surprised if our old buddy Charlie Juliet there isn't already in Portland looking for him, but I don't know. We'll see. But yeah. Well, hey, man, we've Ranger Halley story is great. When I'd say if we didn't have Damani on, we definitely would have been talking about that from the get go. But that is for you. I can't even remember how many times and how many years back we've been talking about that case. There's been a number we've talked about. He is
at least a decade.
Yeah, and you're right. There is something going on because he's the second or third one I know of that has had their case relooked at and have been released and that kind of thing. And I guess I never tied it to the administration, but something is causing a change of thought, and someone is going back and relooking at stuff, and that's good. They are. But hey, it's after 10 here on the East Coast, after 9 there in the Central Time. We probably should get wrapping up because we've been running for a minute. But anyways, want to thank our sponsors. We didn't say. I'll just say at the beginning: Commodity Outdoor Development, Enlist 9 Fight Company, Veteran Outdoors, BooHammer.com, all of our great nonprofits that we support, and sponsors, friends, and Gear for Grunts, and all those have been tuned in tonight. We've had quite a good listenership and viewership tonight. So I want to thank Damani also for coming on, our unpaid producer Rob, who finds him and just about every one of our guests. And thank you guys for this.
And next week we're going to be welcoming on a new sponsor, Alpha Elite Performance.
Are we really? Nice. I know you're ready to announce that. Yes. If I was at home, I would be holding up my Alpha Elite. Got some good stuff, but yes, we got a new logo be going up here on the page. But with that being said, Toby, anything else from you before you wrap it up?
Let's roll. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See everybody next week. It'll be October. We will, I'm sure, be talking about the debates that should happen on Tuesday night. So be sure to tune in. 8 o'clock, Stu and the Nunn. 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central next week. We'll see you all then.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlist 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and BooHammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.